Welcome to the Blackburn End Podcast, where we break down everything that is Blackburn Rovers, be it on the pitch, off it. And whilst we try and be positive, it has been very negative lately. But we do try to give that balanced opinion and see it from all sides. But it has been that bit more difficult than normal. But will this week be any different? Let's find out. So Rovers return to Ewood and take a 1-1 draw against Watford. Ismaël finally has more players to pick from in front of, far less fans. But after finally getting some attacking options back, it's Lewis Miller who grabs the goal. The transfer market has gone quiet, but the manager is still calling for more recruits. But we're back at Ewood against fourth place Hull as Rovers look to build some form after they dropped into the relegation area. But Mark, it's very up and down this season, but we've been down a bit more than up.
We certainly have, and I know we say this all the time, but this is a massive week for the football club. It feels really pivotal. Transfer window finishes, almost a week exactly now. We'll probably record the pod just after it closes, although deal sheets go in, fax machines get paused. But I also think, as we'll get into, we've got a big week on the pitch and a big month then.
No, I completely agree, and obviously we'll get to that when we preview the whole game. We've got a couple of topics we want to talk about, but obviously it was Watford this week. We did get the 1-1 draw. The boycott happened, so there was a lot that I think people were interested in with this game, but this was our initial match reaction. Okay, so in isolation, considering Watford are where they are and where we are, you've got to say it's a good point, but from a performance point of view, I thought the first 20 minutes were really poor, but then the rest of the game, they were there for the taking. I thought that they weren't that great, and I felt like we did quite well at times and really good at others, but it's just getting that ball in that net. And we said Hashi isn't a goal scorer, and lots of people now are starting to think along the same lines as what us and our listeners think. He can't be relied upon. He's got to be scoring those chances. There's other chances that we had as well. And that's why you come away from a game like this and you actually feel a little bit disappointed. In fact, quite a bit disappointed, if I'm being honest. I'm trying not to be too negative. But yeah, it's frustrating. There's quite a bit to break down on this one in regards to tactics, performance, and so on. But you can tell a difference when the likes of Alabiosu come on and Jorgensen with their qualities. I feel like we can build on this, but we need to start taking chances. We need to start being more clinical, and hopefully we'll start picking up some results.
Listen, it's a point. It's better than the last couple of games. It's good to see that he watches and listens to the Blackburn End, because he decided to go 4-2-3-1. Went with Forshaw, went with exactly what we'd kind of said. And lo and behold, we looked a bit more solid and a bit more threatening up front, but it's not enough. They were there for the taking. They're not good enough. And if we are going to get out of this mess, we've got to win games like that. Val might be taking tips off us, but I'm not convinced he can execute it. And for me, he still needs to go. I thought he made a couple of correct calls today. I thought Beaty has needed a rest. Hitchen has needed a rest. I'm not sure what George Pratt has done, but I also understand him going with the experience. I just can't see him turning this around. The players might be coming back slowly, and I'd like to give a new manager a go with them.
Yeah, there's a few technical difficulties with that. I'm not sure why it was jolting a bit, but I think you got the gist of how we felt. I think the thing is, when you go against a team like Watford that are where they are, I wasn't expecting them this season to be where they were, if I'm being brutally honest. I had them as being a club that would be struggling, but they're up there in chasing the playoffs. They weren't as good as I thought they were. I thought they were decent. I thought that the first half of the first half was pretty poor from us. And then we just gradually got into the game, and then we started to get some opportunities. Obviously, they go and get their goal, and it's very much I think this is just going to be an awful day. And then we go and get one, and the game seemed to change. I came away frustrated. I felt like we could have won it. I still feel like now. What about you?
Very similar, really. I thought, Watford are up there, but I've said this a number of times now in the Championship. I think there's a much of a muchness in the teams. Teams go on good runs, and Watford are probably one of them that have had a good run. But I still don't think, similar to Preston, I don't think they've got the quality to end up there at the end of the season or to get over the line. I think the teams with the bigger squads, the better squads, end up there. So I think you look at it, yes, from where they are in the league, you have to take some consideration, but it's about really the day and the form that they've been in. I thought for 20 minutes we barely had a kick, but that's not surprising when you consider how little confidence we've got. They were by far the dominant team. They went 1-0 up, and I thought that was it. The fact we came back so quickly, and it was a great finish, then I think almost reignited the team, and we thought, oh, actually, they're not unbeatable, this lot. And we made them look very ordinary. They made themselves look a bit ordinary, but it's no coincidence for me that the team shape, we created more, we look more comfortable, we look more balanced. Yes, obviously it helps having people like Marishta come back in the team, but all of a sudden, when the fullback's going forward or the wingback, there's somebody beyond him. The strikers aren't as isolated. Cantwell's a bit freer and a bit further forward. The whole thing just feels a bit better in that formation.
Yeah, and I felt like the players coming back have helped. I mean, let's be honest. We know that the injuries haven't been kind to us, and we've broken down why we believe the injuries have come about. We've been flogging the willing horse with a lot of players, and we should have rotated. We should have brought in younger players when we had the opportunity. All of this, and the reason we've got frustrated with Ismaël rather than actually supporting him with it is some of his decisions have seemed really strange. But now we've seen some of that quality come back. It does make you feel, I know that we've dropped into the relegation area, but it does make me feel that little bit more positive, because I could see the qualities. Alabiossi, like I said in my reaction when he came on, you could just see there's a player that we've missed there. Marishta, he didn't have the greatest of games, but you could tell there was something. You know, him coming in has been good. Jorgensen, I'm liking the glimpses I'm seeing from him. Good Johnson when he comes back. I think that's an obvious one, because whilst Ohashi is a good player to have, he's not the star player we thought he was. I think I love the energy he shows. He seems like a proper professional, but I think you're right in what you've said previously. He's someone that does need a rest, and he's someone that needs to probably come away and be allowed to develop a little bit more rather than being relied upon. But again, he's missed chances recently that would have really changed our form. So I'm a bit frustrated with him. But the one player I did want to bring up was Cashin. I did think that Cashin did all right. After a bit of a ropey moment against Ipswich, it was all right. What did you think of Cashin?
I agree. And in the last pod, we talked about different ways to go at it. If you're playing with a 4, you could play almost 4 centre-halves, which Lewis Millen's not really centre-half, but height-wise he is. You could go almost old-school Mark Hughes, where you're playing. I remember when we were struggling, he brought in Don Matteo at one side. I think it probably Lucas Neal at the other, but he basically tightened everything up, made it bigger, stronger. Let's focus on defending first. And I think Cashin got exposed a couple of times in terms of he's not mobile enough, I think, to play there consistently, but I think he also showed his quality. I'd still prefer Harry Picker in there, but obviously, apparently, he's got a hamstring injury that's bad enough to not play, but all right to sit on the bench. So I understand why that's the case. But no, I thought Cashin showed 1 or 2 glimpses. I'll be honest, I've seen more from him so far than I have from the last few weeks of McLaughlin. I thought he struggled. And then moving on to Conor O'Riordan, I'm a big fan of Conor O'Riordan. I think he's got a big future. He's tall, he's quick, he's comfortable on the ball, but he actually looked quite nervy. There was 1 or 2 times where he went chasing after the ball. Now, maybe that's instruction, but that looked on the face of it like a young boy thinking, I've got to get that, I've got to get it. And that's when you start getting in trouble as a defender. That's when you end up giving the ball away, and then you overcompensate and give penalties and things like that away. So just want that reining in a little bit with him. But I think there's potential there. For me, I'd start the next game. If Pickering is fit, I would have Pickering at left back, and I would have Cash in instead of McLaughlin. That is if the mysterious disappearance of George Pratt can't be solved.
I was going to bring up George Pratt when we talked about the squad a little bit later on. Why do we think that he's not been part of it? I mean, is he just being rested? But normally, if they're being rested, there's a comment about it. But you can't go and win December Player of the Month and then suddenly just be put to one side.
It would only point to him going for more experience, wouldn't it? I know O'Riordan's younger as well, but he's obviously had over 100 league games, so that would appear to be the route he wants to go down. I can understand that logic. I think George Pratt's very unlucky, but I can understand the logic. I think the issue there is on the games I've seen him play, they're seeing far more, but I think he's performed better than McLaughlin has right now. But if you want to go down the experience route, I can kind of understand that. I think we are in a situation where you need people you can rely on. Going with Forshaw and Tronstad in front was something I called for. I think you do need to get players that you can hang your hat on a little bit. Personally, I would prefer to see George Pratt than McLaughlin, but I also understand it. I mean, two young boys at centre-half, I get that.
Yeah, I do understand that, but I'd pick performance over anything else. And if you've got someone in form, you've got to wait for him to come out of form. I mean, I like O'Riordan. We spoke about him. I think it was like 2 years ago when we signed him. There was obviously a player there. I was shocked he didn't get a yellow card because he's normally got one in him. But the fact that neither him or McLaughlin got a yellow card, I think, is absolutely astounding because normally one of them will grab one. But yeah, I thought they played pretty well together. When it came into this game, I think my expectations and my levels now are just so low with this squad and this team, and I feel bad for being like it. But I came away actually feeling relatively positive about the future, and I feel like there's going to be some performance in this team that might actually grab some results. In this team that you saw Saturday, which key players do you think really stuck out that you think actually they're going to hit some form and they're going to be the ones that might pull us out the mire a little bit?
I think you've got a solid base, certainly with Tronstad in there, but with Forshaw alongside him as an option. I think Baradji came off the bench and showed his quality. He looked like he benefited from a bit of a break. I think you were spot on before when you said he didn't have his most effective game, but Marishta's touch, just his calmness, he looks like he's got confidence about himself, that he knows he can do something. I like that. I think that his touch in and around the box, I like his willingness to run at people. Jorgensen, is he a right midfielder? I'm not sure. I didn't think he was quite as effective, but I thought he grew into the game. There was one point where he was out of position defensively, but then he got back in brilliantly because his pace gets him out of trouble. But I think you've got to point back to Alabiosu. He comes on and we look a different team. I know we've gone wing backs at that point, but we immediately look more dangerous. He's putting balls in the box, and the players lifted. Him and Baradji, the players definitely lifted, and it gave them that little boost of energy. So I think I will go with the experience of Marishta, but I think you've got to look at Alabiosu from those that were playing.
Yeah, I think he's just got so much quality, and you can tell. As much as the recruitment team's been getting pelters, he has been a great signing for us. Yeah. And his mate Deneva might not be doing quite as well, but when he came on with Alabiosu and Baradji, we did look a completely different side. I really felt like we was going to nick something. I just had this gut feeling that we was going to nick something, but it's just that quality in the final third again. And it could be down to injuries. It could be down to the fact that we've got new signings. People are not quite settled. Maybe Good Johnson would make a difference. But I did feel like we was going to nick something there.
Yeah, I think you look at the way we were playing, it felt like we started to get a bit of confidence back in. I think Jurgensen, if he's going to come off the bench at some games, history tells us, you look back at his record, that he can finish, and he showed it with us. I think what I will point to is Ohashi's chance. That's one you've got to put away. But on the flip side, Watford had a number of chances they should have done a lot better with. And there you were using players, and players were in those situations that have cost an awful lot more money than we are spending on players. So it happens both ways. I think they would be feeling equally. As much as I felt like, maybe it's because we focus on us, but I felt like the momentum was with us. They probably had the bigger of the chances, actually. And they fell to people that they would normally be able to hang their hat on. We aren't a side who's going to create loads. We had 3 shots on target, I think it was, which is more than we usually do. But we're going to have to take them. And that relies on percentages being incredibly high. Ohashi's conversion rate is not good enough. I think he does a job for the team. I think he's somebody who's been absolutely flogged. So I'm not judging him on his performances right now. But his history tells us he's not somebody who will score every time he gets a big chance. Gudjonsson on the other side, and from what we've seen so far, Jurgensen might well be the same. They are. So you need those people on the pitch.
Yeah, let's bring up Ohashi then. Weirdly enough, we've talked about this for a lot of the season, about the fact he's not a goal scorer. I said I'd play in that number 10 role, buzzing around, creating chances, maybe trying to feed other people, cause a bit of carnage with your press if you do it properly. We know he's not a goal scorer, but when he missed that chance, I don't know, it was, again, you feel like it's just inevitable when it drops to him. It's not going to go in. And is it bad luck? Is it, is it the yips a little bit? Is it something like that? I don't know. But I feel sorry for him because he's not a bad guy. He's not a bad player. But when it's literally, I mean, the keeper made an okay save. Well, it was a good save. But normal strikers, they're just hitting that low and in the corners, but it's like he just kind of snatched it, panicked. I just need to get it out of my feet. And it seemed to me like it was it's a confidence thing now with him. And I don't want to harp on about that goal against Derby back when he signed, but that's the player we expected. And then he went and got a couple more. That's the player we expected. And it just it fizzled out. And I actually think it's a confidence thing with him.
Yeah, that's exactly what I will point to. If you look at the classic signs of that, we've seen he can do it before. The Bristol City game, was it last season, where he pinged a couple in the top corners and things. He's usually very calm and measured. But number one, I think you play a 5-yard ball. Most of us could play a 5-yard ball. Absolutely fine. You go and run 20 kilometres in the past week, and we probably would struggle to do it. He's probably running the best part of that twice a week. I think that plays into it. But I also think it is mainly down to confidence. You go back to the Middlesbrough game, he's taking extra touches. He's just putting his head down to look at where he's putting the ball in his feet, that you're getting stuck under him. He's taking a little split second longer. He's not instinctive. All the things we talked about with Gudjonsson, the instinct. But Ohashi has had that before. I've never thought he was a main man. I thought, I know when we talked about him and Gay when they both signed, different players for different horses for courses, different things. I would be using him right now as a rotation option if we had Gudjonsson fit. I would probably be using him as a rotation option with Jurgensen anyway. I think the midweek games, not that you write them off, but if you're going to a Coventry away and you think, we'll do well to get something out of this, let him run for 70 minutes, maybe bring Gudjonsson on, try and snatch the game, bring Jurgensen on. At home against teams like we'll come on to, where we have to win the game, you need to get those people out there because you can't flog. When Gudjonsson comes back, he's got to be managed. Jurgensen's not played that much football. He's got to be managed. Flog Ohashi a little bit, as horrible as it sounds. Let him do the hard yards in the games that you think, well, we'll do well to get anything out of this. And then bring somebody on 20 minutes. And the games you need to win, let them start. That's how I'd be using him from now till the end of the season, really.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, this is going back to where we were battling our emotions with Ismaël and deciding, has he had a rough time because of injuries? Has he caused it himself? Has he made baffling decisions? And this was a game where I looked and I thought, at a time, I did think to myself, hang on, have I been harsh with Ismaël? Because actually, if he doesn't have Ohashi on the pitch and he's got a full squad, you look at that front four of Marista on the left, Cantwell in the hole, Jorgensen on the right. That is probably the three he would pick, and then he would have Good Johnson up front. Are we going to win that game with those four? Potentially. Potentially Good Johnson takes one of those chances or creates something. And then if it's not working, then you've got Ohashi coming off the bench to show some energy. So that might not be a Doherty or a Deneva. So you're bringing quality on that might be a little bit more energetic. So I could, if I'm battling my emotions in my head of how I feel, I might be thinking, well, do you know what? We could have won that game if Good Johnson started and it was Ohashi coming off the bench. So, yeah, I'm at a point now where I can see these glimpses. I just really want to see Good Johnson playing again because I do feel like Ohashi needs to be given a break and given an opportunity to just come off the bench and be effective off the bench rather than starting and trying to be that main goal scorer, which he obviously isn't.
Yeah, I think you're being kind to Valérien there. He doesn't need anyone else to make some excuses for him, but I just think the setup of the team doesn't look well drilled enough. I think he makes poor decisions in general. I'm not going to go over old ground, but he's the one ultimately, alongside the recruitment team, that's meant that he's had to rely on Ohashi as much. He's chosen not to use Tajon, chose not to use Gay. Fair enough, you might agree with him. But he also chose not to even have Harry Leonard in the first team squad in pre-season. So, yeah, I have no sympathy.
No, so the game ends, it's 1-1. Before you pick up your 3-word reactions, if there's any favourites there, looking at the boycott situation, I may as well bring that up. There was a lot of empty seats. I'm not too sure how much I trust the official attendance that came out, but it did look like it made a difference. But the one point you brought up last week that I do think needs to be brought up again is now that's been done. Now they need to show what they could have won, and now they've got to fill a ground and say, right, that's what we can do. This is what we can do. It's up to you now. Do you believe the attendance was 11,640?
I'm sure that was the number of tickets sold, but that certainly wasn't the number of people in the ground. I think somebody did a freedom of information request, didn't they, when it was the Swansea midweek game, was it? It felt very similar to a standard midweek game, not much different. Noticeably in NO1 it was quieter. But I do think that's the way to go now. I think there's some people that don't want to do a protest in general and not go. There's some people who don't agree with who they perceive to be the main players in deciding that we're going to have a protest. I think the one way to unite it and the way to get the conversation spinning in the right way is now to do a let's fill the ground as much as we can. Because what I think you've got to remember is, yes, there will be an element of a couple of thousand people that will have gone to Ewood Park to watch Premier League football who weren't Rovers fans because it was the cheapest game, they can't get tickets for United, whatever it is. There's a core number of people who do not attend. Whether they will come back permanently, I don't know, because once you get out the habit of not attending, it's very difficult to get back in. All of a sudden, it becomes a luxury, not a necessity on your family budgeting. But there are a good number of thousands of people that are not attending, and it's not because Blackburn Rovers aren't in the Premier League, because they've lost faith, connection, whatever combination of things that is. So what you would be able to do is, if you got a crowd of 22,000, didn't even have to be full, you could then turn around and say, actually, when it's 13,000 every week, that's because 9,000 of them are not coming already. It's not just that we've gone from 11,000 to, let's say there was 7,000 there. Actually, you've got a massive number of people already not coming every single week. And should the ownership change, we will return. Whether they do or not, matter. But yeah, I think
it's a perfect chance to advertise to future buyers and potential buyers, isn't it? To say, we're not just a club in decline. We're not just a fan base that's fickle. We are willing to come back. Then this is the numbers that you're going to get. Just come back, do things properly. I mean, Chef Wednesday, look at what they've done. It's not like they're all singing and dancing right now. They're going to go through a stage, just like a lot of other clubs have, Birmingham City being another. They went through a pretty terrible time, and then they've managed to find themselves owners. And hopefully doing something like this kind of points out that we are a team that can be considered a sleeping giant, that if you come in and we will return, and hopefully, if you invest right, we'll be back towards Premier League status.
Yeah, I think I'd probably put us more akin to Bolton. They've got their ownership issues that they've had. They've relatively sorted them to people who they can feel a connection with. I think they've got about 17,000 season ticket holders in League One. So that's doable. Pricing structures and things like that. But there are some quick wins that people could do. And then, but ultimately, you can put whatever marketing spin on, fortunately, whatever you want on it. That's always going to have a limited impact when some people don't want to come because of the ownership. Results does drive things. We know there are an element of supporters who, you get into the Premier League, the attendance will be greater. But I do think there's an element of people that will not come back whilst these are the owners. And that's, their prerogative.
No, exactly. But leaving the Watford game now, what are your favourite 3-word reactions, or which ones made you chuckle the most?
Well, Mike, we actually boycotted the 3-word reactions this week.
Did we?
Technical issue was the real reason. Somebody did ask me, had we boycotted them? Technical issue. The tweets never actually went out. So I thought they'd gone out, but I'm very, very sorry. We have no 3-word reactions.
I'm really sorry. I didn't pay attention to that.
All right. It's all right. Well, I'll give you one now. Big missed opportunity.
Okay. I can't think of one because I've got too much written down in front of me that's about what we're about to talk about. So anyway, we'll move on. We move on to the Hull game. Now, Hull, another team I didn't expect to be where they are. They're 4th in the league. They've shown some really good form. Okay, the cup game, we put out a B side and managed to take them all the way to penalties, and they put out a relatively decent side, but you can't really look into that too much. They've had some really good results themselves. But it is at home. Hopefully we've got some returning fans into the grounds. Hopefully we've got some returning players that are getting fitter. I believe that this is a game that we can go and get something out of again and continue looking a little bit more positive points-wise. What are your thoughts?
I think we've got to look at it. It tends to be a game where the away team wins, unfortunately. I think also we had a tremendous victory at Hull earlier on this season, but we've not beaten them at home since 2021. I think, as I'd said before, I think teams in the Championship are, if you're doing a weighting of chance of who's going to win the game, it's actually more based on form, though, because every team has peaks and troughs. We've seen ourselves when we've played Preston. They weren't that good, particularly. Watford, where they are, they're not particularly amazing. I think you get the odd team like in Ipswich that will pull away. But it doesn't bode too well because their last 5 results are 4 wins and a loss. So it's going to be a tough test. But we have to start picking up more points. We've got to start picking up more points at home. I know we'll come on to it in a minute, but it's a big game. I think we need... we've the last week, we didn't lose. It's another game added to the list, though, that we've won 1 in now 14, I think it is. I need to see another progression is what I need. Ideally, a victory. Certainly no less than a draw, but a progression in terms of performance. Marishta looking a bit sharper. The week between them's massive. If we'd have had a midweek game now, you could have been having a struggle. Do I not play Marishta? Do I not play Miller even? What do we do with Baraji? What do we do with Forshaw? Gives us a really good run at it. We obviously haven't had a run at playing that formation because we played Swansea in midweek. I think now let's have a full week to run at this. Pick this as your formation. Get it working. Get some work done on training ground. And I want to see on Saturday actually, I can see how we move forward with this, because it felt like he'd just kind of gone, oh, it's not working as it is, I'm going back to this formation. And it didn't seem like they'd thought it out very much in terms of pattern to play.
Well, this has been one of the things that we've pointed at Ismaël for, his lack of preparation. We felt like there's been a distinct lack of preparation when he's going into games. The plan doesn't really seem to be installed properly into the players, which is why we conceded so many goals so quick in games, because we just don't seem switched on. We don't seem motivated. Some people are saying that he's lost the dressing room. I'm not necessarily sure that's the case. I just think that he's not necessarily prepared the team, and that comes down to management. But I agree. One win in 14 is absolutely disgusting. No wonder the fan base is where it's at. I've said before, football's supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be enjoyable, and you can't enjoy it when you're just getting slapped every week, or you're just trying to scrape some draws. So, but I do get this. There's this feeling inside me, and I don't want us to be overly positive or overly negative. We've dropped into the relegation area. That's so your baseline's pretty low as it goes, but getting these players back, we always do poorly after Christmas. We always then seem to pick something up at some point and grab some random results. There's potential of new signings. We're not hearing anything solid, but we don't with this club anyway. It's just they all seem to come out of nowhere, so we can't talk about that. But at the moment, there's nothing to say that suddenly, bang, we've got 2 players through the door and we're getting excited. But we have players coming back from injury. There's some potential new signings. We always tend to have a little bit of a bounce at some point. We can't rely on that, but there's normally something. I've just got a feeling this week we could get something out of this game, and I think we could sneak something here.
Love your optimism. I hope so. I can see it. I think we have individuals that are capable of winning the game. I think we've got a potential solid base, and I think Hull aren't world beaters. They're not a team that's unbeatable. They score a lot more goals than us, but they concede more than us. So
I think they've conceded 40 goals,
which
is the most out of the top 11. And I mean, they do score. I mean, they've scored 47, but conceding 40 goals, geez.
And you go back to early on in the season, we absolutely ripped them apart. We looked world beaters that day. So
they've conceded more than we have.
Yeah, I think if we can keep a clean sheet, that's got to be the basis. I think you've got enough creative players. I will go again with that solid base of Forshaw and Tronstad. I could see almost the same starting 11, to be fair. I think Baraji brought something on coming off the bench, but I think Forshaw was the right call. There's a week between games. It's not a bad idea to do the same again. I'd like to see Alabiosu coming on at right back. But with a massive run of games, and whilst I think we can get something out of this one, I would argue that actually the ones coming up are more winnable. I'm not saying we can throw this one away by any stretch, because we are in the poop at the minute. So anything you can get out of it is massive, but there are some obvious games we've got to target.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. So we've got a pretty good run now of fixtures where there's quite a few at home. Home's not exactly the best place to be at the moment for Rovers, but they are at home. Looking at the fixtures, are we fully in trouble? I mean, where are we getting the points? I know you've done some research on this.
Yeah, so, I mean, we've got 29 points at the minute, and I've looked at the last 5 seasons. It's taken 44 points, 38 points, 45, 51, and 49 to stay up. So I think you've got to look at worst case scenario. You've obviously got Sheffield Wednesday. Ignore the points deduction. They are quite adrift. So that tends to mean the points concertina a little bit more. So it's more likely it'll be at the 50 points, which means that we need around 7 wins. And when you bear in mind we have 7 in 28 so far this season, We need 7 in 18 games now. So it's a massive ask. So I've looked at the fixtures, and I think when you are looking at the next run of games, I think we need at least 3 wins. So we need 3 of those 7 before the end of February. So we've got Sheffield Wednesday at home on Tuesday, a week on Tuesday, tomorrow. Has to be a win. No questions asked, no excuses. You've got Birmingham away. You're going to struggle, let's be honest. You've got Middlesbrough at home, Millwall away, tough run. Then we've got, we're into, sorry, I'm going out of order there. We've got Hull, then we've got Sheffield Wednesday. I'll start again. But then we've got Norwich away, massive game. But I think Norwich are on, this is what I mean by form. Norwich are on a really good run. They've got a new manager. They've got a bounce. I don't think that's, I know people are looking at it and going, oh, it's a massive game. They're in and around us. They are. But I'm then looking at QPR away is tricky. Preston at home. I don't care where Preston are. Their form's not tremendous. We are at home. We've got to get something out of that. We've got Portsmouth then coming in. We've got Oxford. Those 3 after the Derby game as well. I'm just deliberately ignoring them. Are massive, massive games. We've got Bristol City in there. So I think if you look at the end of Feb, we've got Derby away, going to struggle. We've got Bristol City at home, Preston at home, and Sheffield Wednesday at home. If we haven't won those 3 games and then chipped in with something at the others, doesn't have to be those 3 games, but you've got to be looking at them now before the end of Feb. If you haven't won those 3, you're struggling where the rest of the points are coming from. So we've got a massive, massive month now.
Yeah, my concern is the Rovers thing seems to be that we'll go and lose to the teams around us, the 6-pointers, and then we'll go and beat the teams that are quite far ahead of us. So you end up winning games, but then you're gifting others points around you.
Yeah, I mean, that was the case. Our away form, we were second in the table for a while. I mean, we're sitting 11th now. We've not won away in 5. It's bang average now. It's just that our home form's so poor. Our home form is the reason we are where we are. I think we have to be looking at turning it around at home, though. You've got to. And that's why I would like what the fan base, not necessarily against Preston, but just maybe Bristol City. I know it's a midweek game. Portsmouth at home is the one for me, though. Say, right, Portsmouth at home, we're going to fill the ground. Because it'd have the plus side of nobody can seriously want us to get relegated. I know people have said, would you rather that than, and then Venky's go, well, we've got relegated before and they haven't gone. So I don't correlate the two. I think we would struggle to come back like we did last time. I don't think we've got the manager in place. We've got the experienced spine of the team. So the last thing I want is us to get relegated to League One. So I think we should be picking that Portsmouth game and saying, right, we are going to fill the ground. Worst case scenario, it leads the team to victory and has no other impact. Well, that's not a bad call, but it's Saturday at 3:00. But yeah, I think this is a massive, massive month because then we have a horrific run of fixtures.
I mean, there's moaning about the pitch again. Campwell's come out and saying the pitch is awful, we can't play football on it and so on and so forth. And there seems to be a lot of excuses all the time about why we can't win games. I mean, we put the meme out there about Ismaël selecting which excuse he was going to use this week, but they need to dig deep. They need to just dig in and get some results. They need to find a way. And they keep calling for the fans and saying the fans need to be there and the fans need to support us. Look, we've done our bit. You haven't done your bit yet. You know, it's the boycott was one boycott. You know, all the other games, the fans have been there. They've been trying to support. Yes, they've been negative because it's human nature. You show us shit, we're going to get annoyed about it. And that's obviously where we've been at. So we've done our bit. Now they've got to do their bit. They've got to find some way of digging deep and actually getting some results. I'm looking at the fixtures now, and I can make a case for us to win all of them. You know, but it's not realistic. But I just never know with this team where we're going to get results, because I look back at when we had to go to Leeds and we got and we got a win. When the last day of the season, when we go and beat Leicester away, which is probably because they'd already won the title, was a little bit more realistic than if they were going for the title. But we do get results now when we need to. Our away following is fantastic. It's really passionate. So there's no reason why we can't get results. My concern is the decisions the manager's making at certain times. I need to have confidence in him again. When we was looking at John Eustace and we was looking at the subs he was making, you could just, every single sub he made just seemed to work, and you could just see that there was logic in what he was doing. Every time something was changing, his plan Bs, which he did tend to have a plan B, you could see there was logic, and if it didn't work, you'd be like, you know what, he did try something different, and I can understand why. But they're paid to make some really high-end decisions, and I can't understand what he's making. So I feel like if we go down, it's probably going to be on the manager more than anyone else. But we do need to get a couple of players in between now and the end of the window. I think the next week, like you say, is going to be massive. If we can get a player or two in and get a result against Hull, I do feel like the fan base will be happier. I think the players will be under less stress from a physical point of view. But then the manager's got no excuses then. I've got the squad up now and I'm looking at it, and it's not a fantastic squad, but I'll tell you what, it's not bad. I mean, you got... Let's quickly go through the squad now. So, Tote. He's one of the best goalkeepers we've had in a while. I think he's one of the better goalkeepers in the Championship. So you can't complain there. Defenders, what's if you've got the squad list in front of you, talk to me about the defenders, because you've got Alabiasu on the right that's been talked about going to Premier League, so he's good. Talk to me about the rest of them.
Well, we've ended up with 8 centre halves, and I think you can make a case for any of them playing. Hitchenson's done a decent job, but I think he'll probably be the one that will go back, maybe go on loan. Hayden Carter's obviously back on the bench. Scott Wharton will be out for a while still, but you've got experience if you want that. You've got the youth of George Pratt, who's played really well. You've got the pace of O'Riordan. We've brought in the experience, and was it 7.5 million cash in went for at one stage? So he's got to be in this mix. If he's going to be considered for left back, that now means Ribero's third choice, fourth choice. So we've got a real imbalance in defence. We've got so many defenders now that could play. If he turned out and put 2 or 3 different combinations of a back four, you could say, yeah, do you know what, that's decent. If you start putting people like Carter maybe at right back or Riordan, and you could genuinely make 3 completely different back fours and go, yeah, that's all right. I wouldn't be panicking. So he's got great depth there. I do think you're lacking another Scott Wharton, if you like, that's just got that real experience at digged in. McLaughlin's got it, but he doesn't seem like the same sort of, he's not grabbing O'Riordan and making sure he's in the right positions, for example. He plays his own game. I think you move on into midfield. If you're playing 4-2-3-1, would you be too upset if it was Tronstad, Forshaw, Baraji? You're struggling a bit after that with Montgomery being out.
So I think the midfield's of concern. Going back to the defenders, just quickly before we leave the defenders, though, we said that there was no depth there. I think they have addressed that through bringing players back on loan that have seemed to have performed relatively well, and obviously bringing in a couple of youth players. So I think they've got quite lucky there. We have missed Carter and Wharton, but I do think they have addressed it a little bit there. But I think it's a little bit more luck than judgment, bringing O'Riordan and Pratt back and then performing how they have done. But yes, going into midfield, it is concerning. It is concerning. Gardner-Hickman just isn't good enough. You called it early, and I think everyone's on the same page as you with it now. Tavares has just not hit the levels we need him to now. He's only 24 years old, so there is potential that he could become a good player in the next year or two, but he's just not doing it for us now. Jake Garrett's got to come back. Baraji, I'm a fan of Baraji. He's got something about him. Tronstad, I think, is the concern if we lose him. He is the big concern. Forshaw has done a job. Christy Montgomery's, I think, deserves a little bit more time when he's back as well. I think if you've got Tronstad in that midfield too, he's like that security blanket, isn't he? Now you just feel a little bit more comfortable when he's in it.
He's massive for us, Tronstad. I think he is somebody who's. You've got to remember at the beginning of the season we were talking about, can he play without Travis? We're not sure. We really weren't sure, and I think actually to come into his own, I think he's a player we probably wouldn't be too far going into sort of over-egging it to say that he'd get in pretty much any team in the Championship. I've seen it Twitch, and I think he'd better their team. Tote, I think you've a chance of him doing the same. Alabiosu is the same. So it's some quality.
We've got players. We've got some players there, haven't we? I mean, let's not talk about the strikers just yet, but we've got some players in that midfield, defence, and goalkeeping departments that could potentially, take us further up. It's just surrounding them with better quality and depth, and I think that's where the defenders, they've got lucky with the likes of O'Riordan, Pratt, Litherlands, so that them coming back in, and the other one, Hitchen, sorry. The other one, sorry, mate. That's really harsh. But we've managed to get a little bit lucky there, but midfield, we just haven't got the luck, I don't think, that we've needed. If Tavares had come in and given just a little bit more, I think we'd be more comfortable. But he's just really struggled to settle in.
Yeah, the problem you've got with Tavares, I mean, obviously he spent time in England before, but he'd only played, 42 professional games before he arrived with us. So we weren't signing somebody who wasn't just adjusting to the country and the league. He's still adjusting to professional football. Same with Axel Henriksen. It's exactly the same situation. He's possibly played, I think, 5 more games or something like that it was. But it's not a lot. You're not talking about Marishta, and that's the difference. Not just players. That was what we were whinging about, if you like. It wasn't just players that hadn't played at the level. It was players that hadn't played that much professional football. So you're asking them to adjust doubly, really. I mean, in terms of Gardner Hickman, he knows him. It's clearly his signing. He's brought him in. He said he was covered for a right back. Played him there once and didn't play him there again until he was forced to play him at wing back. He put him in midfield and seems to be playing him every week until he must listen to us, Mike. I banged on about him. I sat behind him in the Jack Walker lower whilst my mates would continually winding me up, clapping everything he did. Going, look at him. He's just passed into the steward. He's amazing. And I was explaining in great detail to anyone who would listen and wouldn't listen why I think he's absolutely turd. I'm sure he's a great lad. But then Ismaël took him off at half time and we didn't really see him since. So listen, Val, we all want the best thing for the club. If you want to have a chat off air, me and Mike are more than happy to help you out. I'd rather we got somebody who can do the job than relied on us. But listen, if that's what it takes, I'm all for it.
Oh, mate, but if I can get my badges, it means we can actually do it properly together, mate. So I'll continue doing that, and hopefully we'll get our CVs in joint Gerard Houllier, Roy Evans kind of level
Nice
unit that we can create. So let's move on to the striking situation. Now, the reason I wanted to leave this to the end is Ismaël's come out and says he still wants another striker, hasn't he? And I believe someone made a comment saying he's asked for 2 more. I'm not sure whether that's true, but I'm just wondering where this other striker would place. So the striking unit in the moment, I'm going to put Deneva as a left winger on this. You've got Deneva left wing, Cantwell that would play in that number 10 role, Marishta's a winger, Jurgensen's a winger, Hedges is a winger, Cargbo, when he's back, would be probably a winger. Then that leaves you the centre forward of Gudjonsson and Ohashi. So Jurgensen, are we just saying he's not a striker? Is that just quickly, are we saying he's not a striker?
He's played the majority of his career on the right wing.
Okay, so he's on the wing, right? So are we basically thinking that he's done with Ohashi? Because Gudjonsson's going to be your number one. You don't normally have two strikers that are, first team strikers. And then you have a C plan, which is normally like a winger that would play in that position, which I'm guessing would be a Jorgensen, maybe even, a Marishta. Tajon's obviously out the door. I just get the feeling that if you've got a Gudjonsson fit, he's playing. And then if he's not fit, Ohashi's probably taking his place. Where would this third striker fit in? Is it a case of Ohashi's just going to move position or even just be put down the pecking order?
I think twofold. I think he's probably seen what we've seen, that Ohashi's, they're just going purely data, his numbers are not good enough, but they weren't when we signed him. He's underperforms his XG quite immeasurably, and I know that's something that they use because they've retorted that as one of the responses when we've said we're in a relegation battle. Well, data-wise, actually, we're underperforming. So they will be looking at that quite heavily, and I think Ohashi is the one that will suffer from that. But also, up to the weekend, he decided that we'd change formation, and that's what we were going to do. So then you can't just have two strikers, because two are playing, you need a spare one. So I think there's an element of that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, Ohashi will disappear.
Yeah, so this is something I thought about. So obviously going back to even the Tilolovic days when he was brought in, and I don't really think he was given a proper chance, to be honest. No. But obviously he came in and went. But it's quite funny how Gueye, Ohashi and Gagbo were considered, the future. And Gueye's gone. Gagbo, when he's fit, probably doesn't play anyway. And it looks like Ohashi's going. It just shows they got it wrong. They took some risks and potentially they got it wrong. I'm not ready to let go Ohashi at all. I think if he's professional like he looks and he's willing to, play anywhere across that three and then up front, I think he's a good player to have. I just think he wouldn't want to do that.
No, he's part of the other issue is he is 29, 30 come the summer. But I think he's somebody who, when you're pressing so high, you need somebody to do a bit of what he does. Sometimes you need, when you're resting people, you know exactly what you're going to get from him. I also think he's been overplayed. So I think we're not seeing the real Yuki Ohashi right now. Just touching on Cogbo, I think he's somebody who is limited, but like we've talked about numerous times, and I remember you saying this back in the Rovers chat days, we are not going to be able to get, when we look at the attributes we want from a left winger, for argument's sake, we want pace, we want goals, we want assists, we want somebody who'll run in behind, somebody who can run so many kilometres, somebody who'll get back and defend. If we put all of that in, we're probably coming up with, I don't know, Doku and Lamine Yamal. So we're obviously not going to get that level of person. So you're going to have to sacrifice some, and we'll have to rank what we want. Well, pace is something that you can make up for a lack of ability sometimes with a lot of pace. Adam Armstrong was somebody who early on, football intelligence was not on his radar. He used to just run offside. So if you simplify the game for Cogbo, actually, there's something there. I'm not saying he's going to set the world out, but you go back to the West Brom game, I go back to the Wolves game. If you play him and you play him from 60 minutes onwards, you look at the weekend and we go, just doing something a bit different to bring on. How many times have we needed that this season? He's come on, he's really struggled. But if we use him right, you get him on that left wing, you say, right, aim for the penalty spot, you set off, get road runner shoes on, off you pop, we'll find you with the ball. Marishta, Campbell, all more than capable of finding the ball. Gudjonsson's great at flicking the ball on. There's something there for us. You look at the whole game, he was integral in that game. Actually, some neat, intricate passes when you look back at it. He has a role to play, but he's also got 18 months on his contract. And if he's not doing it by the summer, There's a number of the players that they talked about they wouldn't let get into their final 12 months, hence why they were all sold. And there's an awful lot of them come into that, and Yuki Ohashi is another that comes into that as well.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that they're building something different now, and it could have been, and they can't sell this to the player. It could have been that they were bridging players. They were just players that they could bring in and bridge until they got the likes of Gudjohnsen and Jorgensen. I don't know. They're not going to come out and say it, and it's not something that's going to be said until it's successful, and whether it's going to be successful, only time will tell. But it could have been that they've just brought in bridging players. I mean, we've all played Football Manager, FIFA, and so on. You know, sometimes you just got to buy players until you make some money and you get yourself in a situation to buy the better players. And they might have been doing that. I don't know. It seems a very risky job, a risky thing to do when you've got owners that have as much money as they have, and they could have spent more. With all the financial restrictions, they still could have spent more, and we know that. So maybe they were just biding their time. But Ohashi, I do worry about his future, but I don't really want to let him go. Kagbo, I think he's definitely one of those that, I mean, there's something there. Like you say, you can't have that much pace and just let it go. Same with Deneva. But I think they're classic players that could potentially move on, but they probably need some game time elsewhere. But before we finish, we've spoken about the remaining fixtures. We've spoken about the squad. Assuming we might get one or two signings in, how concerned are you between now and the end of the season? Saying Ismail's the manager, how concerned are you between now and the end of the season with our club?
Incredibly concerned. So I'll simplify it. We need 7 wins from 18. We've got 7 from 28. And we have got teams around us like Norwich that will undoubtedly get better. We've got Leicester that could get a 9-10 point deduction that will put them underneath us. They've just got rid of their manager. I think they've obviously got the points they've got. So, yes, they might get 10 points, but I would work on the basis they'll get more points than us from now to the end of the season. So, I think we are in a race between us, Portsmouth, and Charlton. And I think...
I think West Brom could be dragged into it.
Possibly, but I think Charlton and Portsmouth have better managers. That's my concern, not better squads.
Well, I don't know how to articulate this, but if injuries wasn't a thing and Ismail had a full squad to choose from, does that make a big difference?
No, I'd still think he'd underperform. I think we'd be better than we are now, but I think that's by virtue of the fact that Gudjohnsen would have put a couple of chances away. I think when you look at some of the qualities of the teams in and around the league, have Preston got a better squad than us? Maybe slightly, probably not. What I would say is let's have a look at them. You can't really take injuries out of it because I think he's caused some of them. But had John Eustace been the manager of this football club, even with the injuries we had, I'd say we'd be above Charlton.
So you've just taken my next question away from me. I was going to say if we had a different manager with the same squad, same players, where are we? I personally believe we are pushing a little bit higher. And I'll be honest, I question the quality of the squad. I said the depth wasn't there, but I feel like it has been addressed a little bit. I think the little tinkering of the loan system, bringing players back and using some youth players has helped. I'm not as concerned about the final third once Gudjonsen's back as I was. I'm still concerned about the whole squad, but I still want it to be better. That goes without saying. But I'm not as concerned in the final third when Gudjonsen's back. I'm not as concerned with the defenders based on Pratt's coming in and doing quite well, and O'Riordan coming in. Goalkeeper, I'm not concerned at. That midfield, I am still. I would like them to go and get a midfielder, and it sounds like I'm kind of describing Tavares, but I want them to go and get a young midfielder that can control the game, move it around, let Tronstad do what he does, and then someone that we can actually look at and say that is someone that's going to build on. I just want Tavares to work out effectively, and that's probably a little bit too much to ask.
I think I would be dipping into the loan market for a midfielder. I think it's somebody that we need to get us through to the end of the summer. I think Gardner Hitman's not good enough. Forshaw breaks down for fun. We need somebody alongside Tronstad. But actually, I'm getting more and more concerned about Cantwell. Their goal, if you watch it back, it's disgraceful.
Oh yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I was going to bring when it happened and I saw it. I actually said that's Cantwell's fault.
It was,
and I said it out loud. But I don't want to feel like people think I'm just battering Cantwell all the time, which is why I've kind of not said anything.
No, but it's worse because he's got the captain's armband on. But it's appalling. If you watch it back, that is poor. I think he's got something, and I stand by my statement of if you cannot get the most out of a player like Todd Cantwell, you've got a problem. I've said that for a long time. But that problem also does stem from Todd Cantwell to some extent because there's a few managers that haven't been able to. But I think we need him firing on all cylinders. I think that's why 4-2-3-1 suits him much better, a bit more of a free role. If you really need to, for some games, you could whack him out on the left and tighten up the midfield. There's various things you can do with it. But I think we need to get a midfielder. I think you're right. I don't think they will. I think they see Baradji, Forshaw as sort of battling for the other spot alongside Tronstad, and Cantwell plays come what may unless it's a midweek game more than 3 minutes away. So they need to find a solution for that, but that's probably Marishta.
Yeah, so Baradji's definitely one that I am excited about.
Yeah, he's got something.
I just feel like if I'm looking at that midfield area, you're going to be playing two midfielders, and it can't be Tronstad and Baradji every single week. There needs to be other people in there of quality that you can just drop in.
Yeah, and if that's Taylor Gardner Hitman, we've got a problem.
Yeah. So that's the week of Rovers. Let's hope that the next week is going to be positive. We're going to have a couple of players in, some players coming back from injury.
Yeah.
We say every week that we're hoping for a good result, maybe a contract signed here or there. But hopefully next week we are going to be talking about a new signing or two.
I think absolutely. Let's look at this on a positive. If we go and beat Hull at home, which is not beyond the rounds at all, we're heading into a week against Sheffield Wednesday and Norwich. It's in our hands. We've got people like Good Johnson could well be back for one of them games. You go and get a Reyes Cleary that we're being linked with, somebody who's talented, really exciting. Listen, it's going to be a really positive pod next week. There's no getting away from that. It's not that the world is absolutely ending. It's just we've got to call it how it is. And right now, that isn't the case. Right now, we need 7 wins from 18 instead of the 7 from 28 we've got. We haven't got Good Johnson back. We are heading into Hull, who are 4th. It's not that rosy right now, but it can quickly turn around, not just at Rovers, but in the Championship.
Exactly. Well, let's cross fingers that happens. But put your comments down below. What do you think? Are we heading for League One? Is it just blindly going to happen? Do you think that you're positive? Do you think players are going to come back? Do you think we're going to get some signings and it's all going to be rosy and we're going to be pushing up the league before we know it? Put your comments down below what you think, and obviously like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Make sure you share the podcast as well. Friends, family, even non-Rovers fans, just pass it to them. Hopefully they'll enjoy talking Blackburn. But Mark, thank you for joining me.
No worries, buddy. It's always a pleasure. It's the highlight of my week. I've had a few people whinging at me last week. I didn't know what to do on a Tuesday. My commute was rubbish. So here you are, ladies and gentlemen, back on a Monday like we promise usually.
We are back, and I'm afraid the intro that we spent time editing was taken off by YouTube. They told me off for putting that music onto it. So yeah, no more funky intros. But no, have a great week, everyone. Make sure that you try and stay positive. And until next time, have a good one.